Hello everyone, welcome to the Ink Storm. My name is Inque, and we're back with another episode of Love, Death, and Ranting, the series where I and a special guest, my special guest wife, have thoughts about a particular Netflix animated anthology series of a similar name. Say hello.
Hello, I am the Awful Waffle, also known as Ari, and I am the specialist wife.
Yes, you are. So, today, episode 10, Shapeshifters. As usual, spoiler warnings, we'll be talking pretty explicitly about contents of the episode, and also content warnings, violence, gore.
Dogs.
Yeah,
Mild nudity, I guess.
yeah.
Warfare.
For once, we don't have to have a content warning for sexual assault, sex of any kind. There are in fact no women at all, aside from...
There was one woman in a window. She looked at the main character, and that's what she did.
Yep. There's... Yeah, I think there's like two episodes in this series which don't contain women in any kind of fashion at all, and this is one of them. Which meant that because they couldn't rely on sex and titillation, they just doubled down on violence. This is, I think, possibly the most gory episode of the series. It certainly feels like it.
Yeah, I can definitely agree with it feeling like it. I'm not sure. Like, Sunny's Edge was kind of gory, but not quite to this extent. It was just, it had more of it throughout rather than brutality, like right towards the end.
Yeah, and there's different kinds of violence. Sunny's Edge felt more like a brawl, whereas this is... The way this is filmed, you know what I mean? It feels like it's straying more towards gore porn.
I can definitely see that. I would actually... when I was watching this the first time around, I was kind of whatever about the violence, to be honest. But while I'm not super in love with... I don't hate, but I'm not crazy about the design of the werewolves, just because they're kind of generic.
They really are.
The actual brutality of the werewolves coming through, rather than them kind of being kept cleaner, is... I actually kind of appreciate that.
Yeah, it's not a criticism per se, it's just an observation almost.
Sure, yeah.
It makes it interesting to contrast with, for example, Sucker of Souls, which was also super violent, but it was a lot more stylized, and it played it entirely for laughs.
Yeah, this was entirely straight. This whole episode felt like, let's just smash as many, 2000s and 2010 era warfare tropes into a story as we possibly can,
and add werewolves as a...
Yeah.
As the dancing bear, to use the TV tropes terminology.
Yeah, and it kind of bothered me the first time around, but the second time around, it really fucking started to get to me of, like, what is this world where werewolves are a thing? They're a thing that apparently only America is supposed to have, or some shit. But they have to have been around long enough to have their own culture, because that's shown in little ways throughout the entire thing, especially by our main character.
Yeah, it's clumsily put together.
It's kind of implied that they aren't like werewolves from they. It doesn't seem like they're werewolves like necessarily bitten. It feels like they're more than that. It just feels weird. Like the whole setup feels really awkward and not hugely world consistent, and it doesn't make a whole lot of sense except for like the army dudes don't like this dude because he is bigger and stronger than them because he's a fucking werewolf. It's like, okay, that's
just
nice.
fine with all the old stereotypes of the minority and the outsider in the military, and
who's secretly better than all of the people in the.
Yep.
Yep.
You know what this reminds me of, actually?
What?
Just in terms of what you're saying about world consistency, which was kind of niggling at me, but didn't really strike me until you said something. Bright.
Oh, I didn't actually watch Bright.
I haven't either. I've just watched stuff about
kind of absorbed it. Yeah.
Lindsay Ellis's deconstruction is well worth a watch if you have not viewed that. But yeah, this is. I can't accuse this one of having. It's like we were talking about the dump last episode, and we ended up waffling for like 20 minutes, and half of it was off topic because there was just nothing to say about it. Shapeshifters at least has a premise which could have some legs, but it does nothing with it. It does nothing interesting with it.
Yeah, it's too rooted in the stereotypical stories. And I mean, there's another one on here. There's another one in this anthology that is like that, and actually, it's written. The short story is written by the same person, I think. Lucky 13, which does this much better. Like
Lucky
so
13
much
is actually really, really good.
That plays with the tropes in ways that are interesting, especially moving it into a sci-fi genre. But this just feels like there's werewolves involved, and I'm just like, I feel like I watched this before, which is not how werewolves should feel when it comes to this kind of setting.
Yeah, it's in a way, it suffers from the same thing as the dump, in that it's built entirely out of stereotypes. It's just that it's trying to build a more ambitious and interesting story out of the stereotypes, and unfortunately it ends up being less than the sum of its parts, and the parts weren't that good to begin with.
Yeah, and like I can't... Like, the animation in the dump was fine. The design was flawed, in my opinion, but the animation itself was fine. In this, they actually managed to get a lot of really interesting shots where, like, you have a very bland color palette, but it doesn't feel like everything's washed into each other, that's good. That's very good. Except the animation doesn't feel as good. There were multiple times where I was watching the mouth movements, and they were just slightly off. And this is not a good hold-up of the realistic style that a lot of the other ones have. That is fantastic. This one is just sort of like, it's okay.
Yeah, this uses the same sort of style as the Beyond the Aquila Rift, but it's like
it's not nearly as detailed.
Yeah, we had some issues with Aquila Rift. It was not perfect, visually speaking, just purely visually. Let's leave the details of Aquila Rift for that episode.
Yeah.
But this one just doesn't do it as well. Like there are a few nice bits. I thought that the transformation sequences were kind of neat. It's always interesting seeing how people do werewolf transformations, because there's a lot of different ways of doing them. But yeah,
I feel like I've seen the skin ripping off before, though. Like that doesn't feel new to me. Like, maybe it's just because I've consumed a lot of werewolf media over the years, but that just, like, I think that was like the same effect from the Van Helsing movie with
You might be right, yeah.
shoot, what's his name? The
Uh,
nicest man. Wolverine.
Australian dude.
Crap, what's his name? Hugh Jackman.
Hugh Jackman, yes.
There it is.
Yeah. I suppose the benchmark in my head is always an American Werewolf in London. Because that's always the werewolf movie that springs first into my head. Um, but I mean, yeah, you're not wrong. There's basically nothing new in Shapeshifters. The premise of urban fantasy is how I usually term it. Fantasy creatures of some kind in a modern setting is something that interests me. I like to see it played with, but it's rarely done well, is the problem.
Yeah.
And in this case, yeah, it's doing a lot of borrowing and not a lot of constructing.
Yeah, and I mean, you can't. You can't. I think we've said this almost every episode. Is you can't shove an entire world into a short story, but yet that can work fine as long as it feels internally consistent.
Yeah.
And while some of the people in the core being prejudiced against werewolves, sure, but the fact that it's like every fucking one is bizarre. Like it's and the feeling of the main characters and his buddy give off that they at least have been werewolves for a long ass time, and it's part of them and not like a struggle with a beast they have to contain kind of thing. It's a very naturalistic kind of state of being, is at odds with this weird kind of implication that the acceptance of werewolves is new.
It's like they've somehow managed to have their cake and eat it, and that you have the implication of them being new affirmative action or whatever kind of things, but then also get special positions as being the front and back of a convoy to look out for trouble, and especially escorting troops on missions and stuff like that. It's not completely beyond belief. I could see that potentially being a thing, but it's still clunky. I think clunky feels like a really good word for all of this.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. I mean, like, the animation is still good. The
Uncanny Valley faces aside,
yeah, it is kind of hard stuck in there, even for me. And I mean, this is just personal opinion. Is I am not one to glorify the military. I've got all sides of my family coming from Marines and Navy, and I can't support the military industrial complex. I have one member of my family that the military was good for. That's it. One. And otherwise, it's been a shit show. And I really do not jive with stories personally that, you know, kind of glorify in any way the military. And this one, even though the Marines were, you know, kind of racist, just a little.
Yeah.
It still kind of glorifies them, you know, and
it was trying to. It was again trying to have its cake and eat it. On the one hand, doing the very 2000s war movie thing of, ooh, not everything is great. There's questions here, and at the same time, hoorah. But I was
Yeah.
actually going to ask you about that because you are closer to the military than I am. My grandfather was in the
Yeah.
RAF, but that is the closest that I have to anything like that.
Yeah, I've got a stepbrother who was in the Marines. My father was in the Navy. My uh, my great grandmother and my great grandfather were in the force in various ways, both in the Navy. My dad's side has so many people actually in the Navy now that I think about it, and Marines. Most of which I didn't actually get to know, unfortunately, but there's a lot of history there.
Yeah,
And it did affect how I was raised in some ways, specifically by my father. But it, I can't, I'm not comfortable saying that I know what being in the military is like, because I don't. I've never been. I thought about joining the Navy at one point, and I fucking noped the shit out of there. And so I don't know what it's like to be in the Marines. But from the people I have talked to who have been in the Marines, especially recently, or somewhat recently, this is, I guess, now technically like 10 years out of date information. It's a lot of this shit, a lot of this behavior on many sides would not fly. Like, the big man in charge may be able to get away with it, but that sergeant and the way that the oh shit, what's his friend's name?
Sobieski.
Sobieski. The way that he responded to that sergeant would not fucking fly. It just wouldn't. That is the impression I get. Now, maybe we'll get somebody who's been in the Marines more recently who can correct me on that. But it's not about, like, we're not racist in the military, it's about cohesion. Yeah. We don't have the time, we don't have the energy, we don't have the space for people to be drawing lines between each other like this, basically. And it doesn't always function. It does not always work. But that is a lot of the shit that I heard about, basically. I'm thinking specifically of the Marines rather than the Navy, because they were specifically Marines.
Yeah, of course.
What's that famous quote from some dude, which is, we're all equal in the Marines because everyone's treated like a black man? Like,
oh boy.
It was something like that. And, like, I don't know about the dude who wrote, I don't know about the original story about this. I don't know about the people who made this short. But it doesn't feel like it's written by people who have a realistic view on being in a combat situation in the Marines, basically.
Yeah, the original author, I'm sure you'll have your thing about original work isn't important for this, but just for the purposes of trivia, really.
Sure. Sure.
Marco Kloos, German-born U.S. author. Apparently, he did serve in the West German military, but he's mainly known for military science fiction novels.
What do you know? What branch he served in?
It doesn't say. It just lists him as a junior NCO.
Okay.
Which
I don't remember that shit well enough to even hazard a guess.
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, did he only serve in Germany?
Yeah, like I said, he was born in Germany, so
okay.
The definite implication is that he moved to the States after that.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a degree of transfer there, because militaries are militaries, but there's also culture. There's also a culture thing which might just be missing there. So,
I mean, I don't know.
Plus, there's the question of adaptation and such like.
Exactly, and it's the kind of thing of you're right. I am going to say it. The original short story doesn't particularly matter for this because this is not a academic, in-depth analysis of the work. This is here's our thoughts on this piece, and in that case, I think it's, I don't. This is not like some relic out of another time where it's like you can be like, okay, here's our thoughts on this piece, but you have to remember this was made in the 1940s. No, this came out last year, or early this year.
Yeah, March.
This year. God, it's like halfway through the year already. Fuck Christ. This came out this year. There's no context to have outside of here it is. This is what they gave us. And what they gave us was okay.
Yeah.
It was okay.
I think that's probably my final conclusion. This episode is okay. There are worse, there are also better.
Yeah. Yep, I would agree. It's definitely one that you can give a miss, in my opinion, unless you're really into watching dudes flex on how alpha they are, also possibly turning into alpha wolves. If that's your jam,
yeah,
give it a go. Otherwise, it's
I did
fine.
A moment of being not entirely sure how to feel about having a couple of Afghani men as the antagonists, but
oh god, yeah. I that's true, actually, to be honest. I remember having this thought when, like, the old dude was, like, cresting the hill, and then he, like, tossed the the dog tags down. And I just had this visceral moment of, did they think this through? I don't think they thought this through.
Yeah.
But this is so, like, that's what the series has done to me, is, like, this is so kind of mundane on the stupid, thoughtless, racist scale that I didn't even think to talk about it.
We're too busy talking about the sexism to worry about the racism.
Oh my god, like... Jesus.
Yeah, there's... Love, Death and Robots is not horrible when it comes to racial stuff. There are worse out there, but there are definitely some episodes where you sort of tilt your head and go, I have questions.
As one of our friends would say, what white bullshit is this?
Yeah.
Oh.
I was also rather disappointed, because looking at the stats for this episode, for a moment I thought it was directed by a woman, but no, it's an old Italian man.
No. Next one is, though, or rather, the short story for the next one is written by a woman.
That is correct. Oh boy.
Yeah.
We're gonna have a time.
I will fight you.
Next episode is A Helping Hand, which I suspect we're going to have our biggest disagreements about.
We're going to have a fight.
Yes, we are. And you lovely people get to enjoy that. So yes, until next time, I've been Inque.
And I have been a confused wolf fan.
It's fair enough, I suppose. Stay safe, folks.